You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Hey everyone, thank you very much for hitting that play button. This is another episode of the Dave Bullis Podcast. Well, this is about the third anniversary show. It's give or take. It might be a little late, actually. But this is going to be the official third anniversary show. Can you believe it's been 3 years since I started this podcast? And for those of you who've been listening since episode 1, and believe it or not, there's still some of you out there who have listened to me talk for 3 years. Good God, you guys are gluttons for punishment. But anyways, back to the story. The story was, I started this podcast because I was very frustrated. It was about March of 2014. I got passed over for a promotion that was rightfully mine. I was frustrated because I was supposed to be doing all these projects. I never came to fruition for, one reason or another. I was frustrated with what happened with my Game Over TV pilot. We got so far, yet so close, but yet so far. My screenwriting wasn't coming along. A lot of things just weren't coming along. I did a podcast, too, that wasn't coming along. So I said, you know what? I'm going to start something for myself that I can do myself, but it's also kind of like a film school, if you know what I mean. And that's what this podcast was. I wanted to make sure that I was always doing something creative, and that's what this podcast has really allowed me to do. I didn't know where it was going to go, really, when I first started doing this stuff, and now it's snowballed into this, and it is unbelievable. All the downloads keep growing. I see all the social media numbers keep growing. So thank you to everybody, whether you're just listening to this episode as this is your first episode, or you've been listening again since episode 1, or you joined somewhere in the middle. Thank you all so much. Things I'm working on. I'm still working on the first installment of How I Would Have Written It. I mentioned that probably about 10 weeks ago. I've just gotten a little sidetracked with things. I did record the pilot. The first episode is going to be Suicide Squad, How I Would Have Written It. And I didn't like the way it turned out, so I'm actually working on redoing that for right now. And I'm also working on a graphic novel that I'm hoping to crowdfund sometime this year. Actually, I am going to crowdfund sometime this year. I know I keep saying a lot of different things, talking about a lot of different projects, but I'm actually going to work. I'm actually in the outline, past the outline stage. Excuse me. I'm going all over the place here. I'm past the outline stage, and I'm actually going to start sitting down with a lawyer soon to draw up some contracts with a bunch of other stuff. It's always fun stuff when you get lawyers involved. And then I'm going to actually start going out there and finding some graphic artists. I will keep everybody in the loop about that, and we'll be talking more and more about that. Since starting this podcast, I've worked 3 different jobs. My latest job is working in IT, and I'm hoping to get out of that soon enough just so I can go back into media full time. I'm happiest working in media, and it's actually my birthday in 2 days. It will be April 11th, and people have been giving me Amazon gift cards. And what I've been doing is I've actually just added them to my account, and there's a Rebel T6 kit in my shopping cart right now on Amazon that I'm actually looking to buy. It's a little shy of a little less than $600 because it's the full kit. It comes with some lenses, tripod, all that good stuff, and obviously I already have the audio gear. So I am actually working just towards buying that also. Just that way I can just go and maybe do some media stuff, maybe shoot some stuff, maybe do other stuff like that. So that way, again, I'm not having to depend on too many people for something that's not really that big of a deal, if you know what I mean. Maybe I worded that completely wrong. Also, some of you have asked me about the drone video. I was actually supposed to shoot that last Saturday, which was April the 8th. The wind was terrible, and also my DP who was going to show up could not make it. But I was going to do it myself, and I got out to the park. The wind was absolutely terrible. It would have looked terrible. So I'm going to reschedule that as well. So slowly, I've been building up all this gear. Even though if I hire a professional cinematographer for my next project, my actual next short film or feature film project, they'll probably either come with gear or I'll have to rent them gear. I still like to have it just in case. Again, it's always good to have this stuff just in case I'm ever going to need it. I'm not buying this really pro gear that's $3,000 for like a Zeiss lens. This is all stuff that I still though can use and actually gain knowledge and principles on. And then when I really am going to do that for a film, I can hire somebody out for that. So that was my little spiel about everything, and this being the third anniversary show. So again, thank you to everyone who's shared this podcast, who's reached out to me one way or the other. I am I finally feel in a place where I feel like my creative flow is happening again. I'm starting to get a little more creativity and just getting more positivity, because when I right around 2014, it was very, very negative. And because 2000, I was working a job I absolutely hated, and I started that job in 2010. I actually worked that job from 2010 to 2014. And then what happened was 2014, I got passed over for a promotion. Well, I actually worked there from 2010 to 2016, but 2014 is when I got passed over for that promotion. My crappy boss left, and he hired one of his drinking buddies to be the replacement manager, who also was one of my underlings. And one of my favorite times, quote unquote favorite times, was when he came up to me and said, "How do I actually do this job? Can you teach me how to actually do this job?" And I said, "And they just gave you the manager's position. How the hell does something like that happen?" And then when I asked my director why I was passed over, he said, "Well, we think Brian's the better manager, but you're like the more technical side of things." Well, wouldn't you want the technical guy to be in charge of your freaking tech service, your media services center? I mean, my God, it's just the stupidity. And honestly, that was the college I graduated from, man. And honestly, the place looks like it's failing. The place looks like it's doing awful. I remember they had a class coming in, and they took a look around the place, and they said, "It looks like a ghost town around here," because it does. So again, everyone who's listening to this podcast knows how I feel about college in general anyway. But I want to say thank you again. I'm sorry about that little tirade, but again, that's where I've been at, and I'm feeling a little more positive now. So with going through all of that, let's bring some positivity back here and talk about this week's episode. This week's episode of the podcast is actually with one of my most popular guests ever. That's right. She is absolutely one of my best guests ever, one of the most popular guests ever. And then this episode, we're going to be talking about networking, both on and offline, what to do and what not to do. She's a manager and founder of Whitney Davis Consultancy. She's also teaching various workshops in the Dallas area. And at the end of April 2017, she is going to be hosting a writer's panel in, I think, North Carolina. I have to get a firm date from her. So if you look for my social media channels or her social media channels, both are linked in the show notes at davebullis.com. You can actually find, we'll be posting about that date sometime at the end of when that's going to be. That's going to be at the end of April, when she's going to be on the East Coast here. And, people keep telling me networking is one of my strongest assets, one of my biggest strengths, which I guess is true, although people, usually try to avoid me at all costs. But if in the off chance I do get talking to people, I usually make a very good impression on people. Again, don't take anything I say on this podcast too literally. Again, the whole reason I started this was just as a creative outlet, and sometimes I make a joke, and maybe my sense of humor is a little too dry. Again, think of George Costanza hosting a film podcast, and that's what I am. So on this week's episode, again, all about networking. This is all about the do's and don'ts, both online and offline. This is episode 157 with guest Whitney Davis.
You're listening to the Dave Bullis Podcast.
Hey, Whitney, thanks a lot for coming back on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Whitney, you were actually one of my most popular guests. I am not kidding you. I get more people telling me, "Oh yeah, I listened to that episode with Whitney Davis, and she's amazing."
Aww.
I am dead serious. It's you have an effect on people, Whitney.
Well, thank you. That is such a kind compliment. I don't know what it is, but I'm happy to be of help to people for sure.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about on this episode is all about networking and just trying, and getting your name out there and the right ways to do that and the wrong ways to do that. So Whitney, let's just start off. People who've already listened to the other episode, all the people that I just mentioned, they know your bio. So I thought we could jump right in and talk about networking. And
sounds good.
And I wanted to ask you, just to sort of start off, what are some of the most common things that people do wrong and people do right in networking? So let's start off with some of the things that people do wrong when they're trying to network, whether it be in person or even online. What are some of the things that you see that people do wrong?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is in person. On my blog, I have a blog post called Organizing Your Time. And the 4 kind of main things I talk about are transcending the room, kind of looking around and seeing who's there, like initiating the conversation, mixing it up, like not monopolizing with one person, and kind of executing the follow through, like making sure you contact them after you've met them in person. But I think one of the biggest mistakes is that if they've met somebody that they really, really need to meet, that they just monopolize them and don't know when to stop. And I think that that is something that people should really be sensitive to, because if it's something that, someone that everyone wants to talk to, you need to just kind of be prepared, know what you're going to say, keep it short, like under a few minutes, and then let them go on their way. And if it organically occurs, like you can, talk to them later in the event, then by all means take it. If it's y'all really click, then yes, but like I would say keep it short and sweet and then just move on, because you don't want to just overwhelm them or monopolize their time. That's one of the biggest things I think people do wrong in person. Online, obviously no one likes someone that's rude online. I think you just need to remember online in terms of networking, like be smart. When you're online, like whether it be Twitter or Facebook, like you put that out there and everybody sees it. So I always tell my clients, agents check out your social media feeds. So I always tell people, be professional, be uplifting, be positive, be sure that, you're representing yourself in a way that you want to be seen, because you just never know who's going to look at it. So I think those are the 2 things that sometimes, and if it comes to that, it's like have a professional online social presence, and then have a personal one that, you have locked off to only, your friends and family that can see it. Because I just think, you want to present yourself well. So I think that's where, when people mix their personal and professional, that can get a little, you just want to play it careful if you're using that, social media to network in a way that you want to like advance yourself. So those are the 2 main things I can think of for what they do wrong. Yeah.
I've been to those networking events, both where there's a speaker and sometimes where they refer to it as a mixer. And, I've been to them here in Philly, in New York, and I can see a lot of the mistakes as well. And when you were saying they monopolize, I can't even talk right now, Whitney. But
monopolize.
See,
monopolize.
I'm having an effect on you right now. No, I'm just kidding with you. But what happens is I've seen that too, where these people just sort of gravitate to one person, and they almost shoot themselves in the foot, because they go, oh my God, this is the person I want to talk to. I'm going here just for that one person. And now I'm just going to basically keep annoying the hell out of them for the rest of the night.
Yes. Yeah. Not good. Not good at all. And in that same vein, it's like, for whatever reason, when I go to those type of things, it's like, I'll have a line like 50 people deep. And so you just also want to be, when you're trying to network, you want to be, like I said, you want to be kind of aware of the people around you and that other people want to speak to the person. So I just, I always say, writers or whoever in the industry, just be sure, be prepared, like know your pitch. If you want to like talk to them about your project or something, that's great. But like that 90-second elevator pitch is a legit thing. Just kind of like tell them what it's about and get the heck out, and then grab their card or give them yours and then execute the follow through later. Like there's always time to follow through, but once they've met you face to face, like there's a bigger chance that they're going to, and remember you, there's a bigger chance that they'll contact you. So I would say, it's not like the conversation's over. You can always contact them afterwards. So
yeah,
I don't know if you have anything to say about that. That's just my opinion. So
Well, and I always love hearing from you, Whitney. And the reason I'm just sort of chiming in with my own experience, because I've told you and I tell everybody else, believe me, I have been very fortunate to meet a lot of really cool people like yourself. But other than that, I really have nothing else going for me. But
stop that.
But no, it's just one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen at networking events is I see people handing out their business cards to everybody, just to everybody.
Yes.
Who, it's almost like they're giving away free samples of like the Chick-fil-A or
yes.
Do you have Chick-fil-A's out there in the West or not?
Yes.
Okay.
There are Chick-fil-A's in Southern California. It is great.
Okay, because I remember every time I go to a Chick-fil-A, there's always somebody giving out free samples, and I always use that. So it's
so good.
it is. It's really good. But when I see people at networking events handing out these business cards, like almost like they're just giving out, free samples. There was one guy who actually changed it up, and what he did was he gave away a copy of his movie on DVD, and I thought that was cool. But then I was like, man, I got to carry this thing for the rest of the night now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really cool. I think it can be off-putting too, like you said. Like you have to play it really safe with that. Like give it to someone you know that's definitely gonna look at it because, like, yeah, you said, I mean, it has an upside and a downside that someone would be so kind of innovative, but at the same time, it's like, oh gosh, I have to carry this thing all night. But yeah, I agree. Like on the business card thing, I say it's like save it for someone. I say don't hand them out like candy, but give them to those individuals that you really need. You really either they like. Here's an example. Here's a perfect example. A lot of times, higher up gatekeeper, like executive types, they don't carry business cards because they don't want to be contacted. Like they're just too busy, and it's like they don't want to be contacted, so they aren't going to give you their business card, like flat out. So I'll give you an example. When I was at AWP, not this year, but last year, it's the Association of Writers and Writing Programs. It's more on the novel literary side, but I was there, and I kind of, looked at the schedule ahead of time to see if they had any kind of Hollywood or screenwriting-based ones. And there was this one that was TV-based, and David Levine from HBO was there. I don't think I told this story last time, but this is so crazy. I just am a huge fan of his. I mean, he's the head of drama at HBO, and so he's over Westworld and Game of Thrones. And so after the event, I went up to him, and again, he was kind of swarmed, but I waited. And I was just like, hey, I'm a lit manager, and I've just started representing screenwriters. I'd love to take you out for coffee and, just pick your brain for a few minutes. I was wondering if I could have your card to contact you, which is probably a rookie move on my part. And he's like, no, I don't have one. But he's like, you give me your card, I promise that I'll reach out. And I gave it to him, and I was like, there is no way that this guy is going to contact me. It's David Levine. Like, my card is going in the trash. But I gave it to him anyway. And lo and behold, I'm not kidding you, he emailed me. But what he did was that he only wrote in the subject line, like, nice to meet you Saturday. And he didn't write anything in the body. And so the email, like Gmail just kind of like ate it up and it got lost. It was weird. And then I found it like a month later when I was cleaning out my inbox. And I was like, oh, this cannot be happening to me. He emailed me and I haven't emailed him back. And thankfully, he thought it was the funniest thing. I emailed him. I was like, oh my gosh, I still love to come have coffee with you. I don't know why this happened. And he's like, no, I do that on purpose to see who's paying attention. This is awesome that you actually wrote me back. And then he invited me up to the offices, screw coffee. I got to come up to HBO. It was great. And it ended up being like an open door at HBO. It was awesome. Like, I can go anytime now. But that's an example of higher up execs aren't going to have their cards on them, but they're happy to take yours. So just be careful, kind of, because it would suck if you handed out every single card you had and then you ran into someone who didn't have a card and they really needed yours, bad luck.
So
yeah, that was a crazy story.
And it is, Whitney. It is a crazy story. And I wanted to ask a follow-up question.
Yeah.
What was one of the things that you felt sort of set you apart, that David Levine, sort of went out of his way to, in a matter of speaking, to sort of make sure that, he emailed you back. And then when emailed you the first time, then when you responded back to him, he actually responded back. Was there anything special that you did? Meaning, like, did maybe he say, "Hey, Whitney, somebody I want to work with"? Did he say?
Oh.
I mean, was it something like that? I mean, the reason I asked that question is one piece of networking advice that I've always been given is give value to people. And,
Yes.
and people value is all different to everybody else. What's valuable and what's not valuable. And
Right.
and what I'm trying to ask is, what maybe did you say to him that he said, "Hey, Whitney is definitely different than everybody else here"?
Man, I honestly don't know, but all I can say is this. I was totally transparent with him. I didn't take much of his time, but I was just like, look, I was just like, I know you're busy. And I literally was just, and I said, when I talked to him, I was like, I'm going to shoot straight with you. I have just started representing screenwriters. I am just the beginning. And I was like, and I'm a huge fan of yours and know that you're the head of, I was just like, basically, I'm a huge fan and I'd really love just to talk to you. Like, I don't want anything from you. And I said that. I was like, I don't want anything from you. I just want 30 minutes of your time to like just talk about the business and shoot the breeze. And he was like, absolutely. And so part of me, like looking back on that, I think it was in Hollywood, there is a lot of doctoring your resume, if you will, or saying things that aren't true, trying to make yourself look better than you are maybe. And he did say that he thought it was so refreshing that I was just honest, that I was like, I can't offer you anything at this point. Like, I'm just starting, but I just love to like get some advice. And so he said that was one of the things actually that now that I think about it, that he mentioned to me. And he just was like, you were so not desperate. Like, it was just so refreshing. You kind of like came off as like, if I emailed you back, great. If I didn't email you back, no big deal. Like, he was like, I didn't feel any sense of obligation to you. And so I think that maybe that was it. Because I think that there's just so, when people meet people that are in decision-making positions, I think that they can smell desperation, So, I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. Like, he didn't really make that big of a deal of it. And I will admit, I can't, it was just one of those things. I don't know. I was very blessed by that. I wouldn't even say lucky. I was just blessed that he contacted me. But those were things he did say, that I was very transparent and just very, just amenable to whatever he could offer, that I didn't need something from him or want something from him other than his time, just a 30-minute coffee. So I think that's the big thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps.
It does, because I think you said that one magical word, Whitney, desperation. I actually knew a manager who one time went to one of these pitch fests, and it was a huge event. And he said what he did was, nobody knows what he actually looks like. If he says his name, he goes, people recognize the name. But he goes, nobody knows what he looks like unless they really are, trying to find him. And basically, he went in the back of the room and he was just listening to these pitches and everything else. And he said the number one thing he took away from this is, he goes, the desperation in the room. He said he felt like every writer wasn't really pitching their story per se. He said they were more like, oh God, I need a break. Please give me a break. Yeah.
And there's so much to be said for that. I mean, there is a huge difference between passion and desperation. And like I said, you can smell it. You can smell the desperation. And so I always tell my clients, even when we're going into just a general meeting at a network, not necessarily to pitch anything, but there is a very fine line between being passionate about your project and excited and, motivated by what you have and wanting to do something with it, versus just being like, please, somebody love me. Everyone thinks of the Sally Fields, like, acceptance speech at the Oscars, however many years, like, you love me, really? But I mean, seriously, it's a huge turnoff. So I think that there's that, just you have to kind of lean more towards the passion side and less away from the desperation side, because it can be a make or break thing, legitimately. Like, they don't want to work with someone that's like emotionally needy or desperate in that vein. Like, they just want to work with someone that's passionate about their writing. You know what I mean? So for sure. Yes.
And I also think because it is like we mentioned this before, it's like going into a relationship with somebody. If you go
Yes.
into and you don't want to be with somebody who's going to constantly be calling you saying what's going on with this, what's going on, you know,
yes.
don't you dare hurt my baby.
Yes.
Meaning the
And
script.
it was so funny. I hope it's okay for me to mention this because I think that I don't know if you saw it. I got one of the questions on Twitter that I think it was from Jeff Lyons, and he's a colleague of mine that I've actually met at a conference before, but he asked, you know, what's one of the stupidest things? I was like, well, I wouldn't use the word stupid, but I mean, that's fine. He's like, what's one of the stupidest things you can do when seeking representation? And that's, you know, kind of piggybacking off of your last comment. I mean, that's it. Someone that just constantly, you know, once you've sent, especially like once you've sent your material to either a producer or a representation, you know, like an agency or a manager or agent, just constantly like calling them or contacting them or emailing them or pinging them. It's just like, give them space, you know, to work. I think that's one of the biggest things because it's like if they just can't be professional and wait like a good, I mean, usually people say, oh, we'll try to get back to you within this time frame. And it's like, if they can't be patient, that's another thing. It's like they don't want to work with impatient people. Like they want professionals who can send off their work and just be at peace with that. So that is, to answer his question, I think that's one of the most, I mean, I don't know what you can say, unattractive things is people that just can't sit and be patient in kind of the lull of waiting to hear back. Because I mean, the realistic kind of situation is Hollywood moves like molasses in all aspects. Like things get stuck in development hell. Managers have tons of stuff on their desk they're trying to go through. Production companies take forever securing financing. I mean, there's just a lot of waiting, you know, so you need people that can just be at peace with the wait, which is hard, but I mean, it's important. So, I mean, that was just to answer his question. I didn't know if we had any more, but I wanted to answer that while I thought of it since it mattered. It went with that. It went with that question.
Yeah,
so
he also told me to tell you he said hello. So.
Oh, well, hello. He's great. He's such a good he's so great. He's such a good teacher. Shout out to Jeff. Woo, he's awesome.
And yeah, thank you, Jeff, for sending that in. But yeah, I you know, again, it's just, you know, seeing questions like that. It's great. I love when people actually, you know, interact with this podcast. I try to make this podcast more interactive than other podcasts.
Yeah.
Most questions get answered during the course of conversation, and sometimes it's a little crazy. Like, for instance, Whitney, here's one for you. I had Kazian Oviz on. Kazian is the producer of Dallas Buyers Club and all these other, you know, movies that win tons of awards and have, you know, awesome people like Matthew McConaughey in them. And the number one question, I'm sure you could guess, was ask Kazian how I could pitch him. And I actually made it a joke out of it, and Kazian just laughed and said, if they're very good, they'll be able to find me.
It's true. It's very true. But I will say that guy that was the manager said no one knew what he looked like. I mean, that's brilliant, especially in this day and age, to like for people not to know what you look like. I think that's awesome. Because I like one of those things. I walk into a room, that was about to sound really weird. I've been a few places where I've walked in the room and people like automatically recognize me, but that's because I'm just apparently I mean, I guess I just plaster my picture everywhere. But I mean, I think it's brilliant to not be recognized. You know, but it is true. Like if you're good, you will find a way to eventually get to those people. I mean, it may take some finagling, but it will happen, I believe, for sure.
Well, and I think you, Jennifer Gersani, like Pilar, Lee Jessup, I think all of you you all have a unique look to you. And honestly, you know, like Jennifer Gersani, she looks like I could spot her out of a crowd of 1 million people. You know,
well, she is so pretty. I mean, she's so pretty. I love her. She's so pretty. But yeah, and she's smart too.
Well, all four of you are smart, and you have that enigmatic personality where you actually walk into a room and people go, "Hey, who is that person? They look important." Trust me, when I've been in, this is all stuff that I've come to terms with over like going to networking events. I've you know, like I've said, I've been in the trenches and I've sat there and I've listened to what people, you know, who are, you know, sort of walking around, handing out stuff, sort of this and that. asking, and they would go up to people and go, "Oh, you look like you're an important person," blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, my God, why would you ever come out and say that to somebody? I mean,
I don't know. That's so funny. I don't know why you would say that to somebody. I think that the thing is to just play, this is so fun about networking is I think that, like, I always just tell people, I mean, everyone is just, they're not like unicorns or like magic, magicians or miracle workers. I mean, they're just like you and me. It's like, yeah, they do a really cool job and, are gatekeepers to, like, the big time and, decision makers maybe, but like at the end of the day, they're just like you and me. So I always am just like, play it as cool as you can. That's just what tickles me. I just think it's so funny that people, and I get it. Like, I totally get it. I mean, there's people that I get starstruck around. I like take a minute to like center myself before I say something, So I think that they just want to be treated like everyone. I think at the end of the day, they just want to be treated like everything else. And I think those are the people that stand out to them when the people don't freak out. You know what I mean? When they just treat you like just anyone else. So I think that that's when they do appreciate it. So.
Yeah, I concur, Whitney. There's only two people I can think of off the top of my head. If I ever met, I don't know if I would be able to sort of center myself. I think I'd be like, oh my God, and that's Tarantino and Mel Brooks. Those two guys. If I ever met them, I'd be like, well, I better stay away because I'm going to make a complete freaking idiot of myself.
That is so funny. I don't know who mine would be. I'd have to think about it. Oprah might definitely be one, but then I'd have to really think. I've seen so many, but then again, oftentimes, like I said, I don't talk to them, like, unless there's a reason to. I just kind of admire from afar and, like, do an inner freak out and keep to myself. But I've seen a lot of them in LA for sure. So, yes, I was stuck in an elevator with Tom Cruise once, and that was very entertaining. But that is for another time and place. So go ahead.
It's just a quick side note, Whitney. I actually Stephen Pressfield, and Stephen Pressfield is a good writing.
Yeah.
He's a writing instructor and a author, and he actually was on Oprah's show, and I forget what not the actual Oprah Winfrey show, but there was a show on her network, and it was conducted on her private island. And he said you actually fly to Hawaii, and then you have to take a private boat to her private island. And he goes, and he said I've never seen that ever, that of anybody I've ever known. And he said it was absolutely amazing because Oprah owns all of this whole island is all hers. Yeah. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, she's like I totally look up to her. I think she's just incredible. So yeah, I'd probably freak out if I met Oprah, but I'd have to think about other people for sure. I just think she's amazing. I think in my other alternate life, I would love to be a talk show host. Maybe I should start a podcast, and then I kind of can be. What do you think?
Yeah, you should start a podcast. Honestly, the amount of people that have said to me, "Oh, I've listened to Whitney's episode." I started guessing when they said, "Oh yeah, I've listened to an episode or two," and I said, "Let me guess, Whitney Davis," and they go, "Yeah, how did you know?" And I said, "Yep, that's that."
Oh, that's so funny.
I don't know. Honestly, Whitney, you just have it because it's honestly, it's just unbelievable. But it's funny is that just you starting your own podcast. I was actually just talking to a couple of different people about them starting their own podcast. And the number one thing I always say to people, if you want to start your own podcast, is this. Number one, make sure it's unique, because if everybody can start one, which they can now, you have to really stand out from the pack. And number two, have a deep network from the beginning so you can sort of hit all these bases. And honestly, Whitney, I think you have number one and number two down pat. I think honestly, if you start a podcast tomorrow, you could honestly take over.
Well, it's interesting. Because it's crazy. I just love talking to people. And that made me think, kind of going back to the networking thing, I was just thinking how insane it is these days with the ability to network with social media. I kind of talked at the beginning about how, people do look at your social media to kind of get a temperature gauge for who you are, how you tend to conduct yourself. But it's nuts. I mean, Twitter, especially for the writing community, is just invaluable. Like, I cannot tell you how many professional contacts that I have made via Twitter. And the way that I did it, I mean, I only started a year ago, and I have close to 2,000 like organic followers now, which I think is a pretty good number for just starting a year ago and not really having any idea what I was doing. But what I tell people when they're like, hey, if you want to kind of like make a name for make a name for yourself on Twitter, or like kind of build your following, I was like, you always need to really, I'm trying to think how you do this, like basically demonstrate what you have to offer, like share and post and link to things that demonstrate you're serious about your craft and that you're a knowledgeable asset to the creative community. And, if you're writing something, like put teasers on there about it or link to the synopsis or, anything. Like, I think those are such good ideas. It's amazing to me, literally, how many speaking engagements I've booked or, like clients I've found or producers that I've connected with through Twitter and just the content that I post. I mean, we met through Twitter. Good grief. I mean, this wouldn't be happening for Twitter. So I think that it's an invaluable thing if you know how to use it right. You know what I mean? So that's what I was saying about, posting and sharing and linking to really good stuff and showing that you're a supportive member of the community and not someone who's always being negative. I think those are all really good ways to build your credibility, if you will, for being a writer or a part of the creative community. I think that's a really important, tip, if you will.
Yeah, and I concur. I mean, I think Twitter is the best social networking tool, even more so than LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn doesn't allow you to actually see who you're really talking to. I think Twitter is a lot better. You can actually see people as, they're usually working. I mean, honestly, when people are on Twitter, they're usually doing something. They're in a Twitter chat, or sometimes they're throwing up a tweet, but they get a response back. And I always say a tool's only as good as the person that wields it. So So when I have friends of mine who are writers, who are YouTubers, and they refuse to use Twitter, and I'm like, guys, you are missing out on all this stuff.
Yeah.
And they just, it's like maybe it takes a while to go from the head to the heart, but I mean, they ask me how to do all this stuff, and I'm like, here you go, and like, oh, nah, you forget it. And then a month later,
I get it. I mean, I'll admit that I was super, and I'm being serious, I was super intimidated by Twitter. Like, I just didn't, and even being like, I mean, I'm on the upper edge of like the millennial generation, I guess. Like, I just did not, I'm trying to remember. I mean, Twitter came out in like, I think 06, 07, maybe somewhere around there. But like, I just remember being like, what is all this stuff? Like, it has its kind of own language and system, but once you get it down, I mean, it's so easy. Like, they even have, I mean, on the book side, on the literary side, they have pitch events on there, like 3 or 4 times a year, where literary agents from the big agencies, like, basically just scroll through the feed, like looking, and they search the hashtag for the pitch event, and like people get signed with book agents from Twitter. I mean, it is crazy town. It's amazing. When I speak at book events, I'm like, you guys have got to get on Twitter, because the writing community is fantastic and people are so supportive and, engaging and want people to succeed. I mean, it's like a family. It's fantastic. On the movie side, like on the Hollywood side, I would say it's just as good. I mean, I think it's so great. I love it. I can't say enough great things about Twitter and Instagram, but Twitter more, I think. So, I mean, I have a ton of Twitter friends I've never met in real life, but I consider them like my friends. And it's great when you like find out you're going to the same event and get to meet in person. Like, I met someone this summer that I've been friends with for like 10 months and got to meet them in real life through Twitter. I thought it was so great.
Yeah, and we've actually never met in real life either, but, we're friends.
We haven't. I know, and we're friends, and that will happen someday. I feel it. I'm coming to the East Coast in, like, the end of the month. I'm coming to Virginia Beach for a Hollywood, like, panel mixer thing.
Really?
Is that far from Pennsylvania?
It's probably like...
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in Philadelphia. It's probably...
Philadelphia. Yeah.
Those are fighting words, Whitney.
I know. Sorry. I'm really bad with geography. Don't tell my teacher from high school. I'm terrible. But I'm going to Virginia Beach at the end of April for a mixer and like networking event. in Virginia Beach, Virginia, Norfolk, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so you should come.
Yeah, Whitney, I want to hear more about this because I actually like if I'll check my schedule. That'd be great. I could actually come down there and even do a podcast from there.
You should. It's on the 29th. And Rachel, I'm trying to remember who else is there. It's like Rachel Pollan, who is like really big time, and I'm totally blanking what it is that she does. I should look this up real quick. But yeah, basically it's going to be like some of Timbaland's people and like some music. There's going to be some like music representatives and who else? Literary representation, some producers there. It's like going to be so fun. So it's April 29th in downtown Norfolk, Virginia. So you should come. Everybody should come. It's going to be fantastic. And then I'm not over there again until August. So yeah, you blink and you miss me. I'm there for a day.
I will link to this event in the show notes, Whitney. I'll get together with your assistant. And I'll make sure that he sends me like a URL. I can send people there to the event to the event page if there's like tickets or anything. Okay.
Yes, there are.
So, as you sort of talk about, we were talking a lot about networking, offline as in person and in the mixer we were just talking about. And as we talk about online networking with Twitter and everything else, is there ever a number one mistake online or maybe not even number one? Is there anything that you see a common theme that people make online, a common mistake that they sort of make? If I were to say, just to throw mine out there, the things that I see, it is this. It is filmmakers who don't make any relationships, and the first time they talk to you is when they're asking for like a donation to their crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah, that's not fun. I mean, yeah, I would say on the same side. I mean, I think that. So you're asking specifically, remind me specifically what the question is, because my mind kind of wandered there for a second while I was thinking examples. But you're saying in person, you're talking online. What's the biggest mistake that people make, right?
Yeah, online.
Oh gosh. I think, social media is a blessing and curse. I've heard, and I would agree, I do not think that you should pitch people on social media unless it's like a specified event. Now, I have gotten pitches. I hate to say this in case people are listening. I have gotten people who've tried to like pitch me via like direct message on Twitter or via, direct, I guess it's like Messenger on Facebook and stuff, people that I'm friends with. Most of the time, I already have a working relationship with those people, like in some capacity. By working relationship, I mean like I know them. I've spoken to them before. I've either met them in person or, have had long discussions with them via social media. So for them to like send me stuff via Twitter or Facebook, it doesn't bother me so much. But there's the occasional time where I do get, people sending me stuff that I have no clue who they are. And I'm just like, I have a website, like try a little harder, like send it to my, email so it doesn't get lost. I don't know. And I would say that's across the board. I don't know that people think that social media is the appropriate place to be pitched. It's just, I think that a lot of people think it's unprofessional. It's like, if you really want to pitch me, then like just send it to my work email or submit it via my website or whatever. I think a lot of people would say that. So that's kind of like the number one pet peeve that I've heard, that not just me. I mean, I've heard other people say that it's just not okay to like pitch someone via social media unless it's like, and it's like an actual legit Twitter. Now I'm having this hard time talking. Twitter pitch event or whatnot, or a Facebook contact or something like that. I think that. And then, I think that's it. I can't think of anything else. I don't mind. I love it when people reach out to me via social media and like have questions or just want to talk. Like that stuff doesn't bother me. I've never really encountered like quote unquote trolls, like people that are rude. Like I know other people have, and obviously that's never polite. But I think that's my biggest one, is getting pitched or sent like material via, depending on which part of the country you're from, like through social media, direct message or messenger on Facebook. I don't like that unless I already know you, and then I don't really care. Like that doesn't bother me. So yeah. I can't think of anything else though. I don't know if you have anything else to add. Nothing else like immediately comes to mind.
It's just a lot of, for me at least, I mean, again, I don't mind people reaching out to me for whatever reason, except for the first time that they message me, it's always to donate to the crowdfunding campaigns.
Yeah.
I mean,
that is super annoying.
Yeah, and it's honestly, it's almost like, hey, Dave, why don't we do all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Here was one that really got me, Whitney, and this is from a person in Philadelphia, too. They said, hey, Dave, could we come on the podcast and promote the episode, link to our crowdfunding campaign? Could you also donate to our crowdfunding campaign? Could you also help promote it on social media separately?
No.
And they also asked me if I could if they have my contact list and something else. And I said, what am I getting out of this again? Like, what am I?
Right.
And they go,
like, am I getting an exec producer credit on this? Or
yeah.
What?
I was like, what I said to him was, I said, what am I getting out of this? I said, literally, I said that because I was like so taken aback. And they said,
yeah,
you would actually, they were like, well, you would actually want to be compensated. And I said, is this person like from the planet Earth? Like, what am I just like,
yeah,
and it just
chopped salami.
Yeah, I don't actually talk to this person anymore either. And I actually, I just sat there and I said, there has to be like there has to be something wrong.
Yeah,
like they had.
I agree. I think that and here's a good point. I think in the networking world, right? I think that when people network, I mean, oftentimes you need to consider it as a business transaction. A lot of times. Now, what I mean by that is you want to work with people where you understand that it's going to be a mutually beneficial relationship. It doesn't always work like that. Like for David Levine to take time out of his busy day to like give me just some advice. And at the end of the meeting, he's like, you're welcome to come pitch anytime you want. Like he could see that I was bringing value at that point. But I think, when you're on the same level as somebody, you want to try to network with people where you have mutually you have mutual interest, and it's going to be, mutually beneficial to both parties. It's like, I can do this for you, you can do this for me. Like, this is a good working relationship. Now, when you're trying to get a manager or an agent, like, it may not come across like that always, but you need to remember something, that if you know that your work is good, then that agent's going to want to work with you. Like, they want to find material that they can sell and that's going to be great for everybody. So I think that the best thing to go about, is how you present yourself. And again, it's not about the desperation. It's just wanting to find the best fit. So I think that's what people really admire in other people, especially like writers and people in Hollywood, is that they want to see that the other person's going to pull their own weight, and it's not like they're just like a leech trying to take something from the other person. That's where people, I think, get really turned off, is when it's just someone that only wants something from them and the other person has nothing to give in return. So I like to tell people, I'm like, when you go to these events or reach out to them, always be in mind of like, how can this be a mutually beneficial relationship for both of us? Like, how can I lift them up, and how can they help me? So I think that if you look at it that way, it kind of puts networking in a fresh perspective, especially in the entertainment industry. So I think that's something,
Well, and it's also, Whitney, too, I agree. It's, giving something of value. So you're not just going up to somebody and asking them immediately for something. And honestly, like knowing who they are and like saying, not just knowing, they have some kind of power. They're beyond a gatekeeper, or maybe they're the gatekeeper themselves.
Well, in that same vein, though, like, I think it's super important. Like, if you're going to be at a networking event with someone that you need to talk to, i.e. a producer, an agent, or manager, in that same thing about, having something of value, that's why, and you kind of said this, that's why it's so important. And I may have mentioned this in the last podcast that we did, but I'll say it again. It is always so important to research and do kind of like kind of do your research and background on these people before you talk to them, because go to those people that like are specifically looking for the stuff that you have. Like oftentimes people come to me and they're like, hey, would you read this? And I'm like, well, I would, but I really don't work with that genre, you know? So I'm like, if you have something that is very much in the same, like I'm talking to the writers at the moment, or even like the film people, like if you have something that's in the same tone or the same quality or the same genre, and you know that there's a producer or agent or manager who represents that type of thing, or it's very similar to someone that, you know, was successful, that they had success with, it's like, go to those people and make it be like, hey, you know, after you've kind of broken the ice and chit-chatted a minute, be like, I have something that's very similar to blank, and it, you know, it fits in kind of your niche and what you're looking for. And like, I think this could be a mutually beneficial relationship. Like, I think this may be something that you'd like to look at. I mean, because obviously it's like, if they don't represent horror and that's what you have, then you're wasting their time. And so I think that it's always good to make sure that you're approaching someone and not wasting their time. So doing that research ahead of time, and, you know, knowing what they have is a major, major bonus. You know, that they can tell that you've researched them ahead of time and know what they want. Like, they will really appreciate that, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, it makes perfect sense, Whitney. So, like, you know, if you were to specialize in, let's say, comedy, I'm not coming to you with, like, a horror or a drama.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. A lot of people, like, I felt so bad. The other day, a friend of mine, or an acquaintance of mine, sent me like these 2 scripts that were kind of period pieces. And I totally know that there's a market for period pieces out there, but I just don't, like, I personally don't have a passion for them. And I looked through it and I was like, it's obvious that this person is a talented writer. The only thing is, like, A, I wouldn't really know where to take them. And 2, because I just don't like that stuff, like, it's hard, just, I don't care. It's just like, you know, you have preferences. Like, just because I don't really care for period pieces means it would be super, super hard for me personally to be passionate about that. So, like, for me to go into a meeting and try to represent something I'm not super passionate about, like, it's just not going to work. And so that's why I was like, the other day I was talking to someone, I was like, no, it's sometimes it's really a crapshoot, because it's like, I totally like that. You know, I totally appreciate him. I totally appreciate, I think he's, you know, he's talented. I just like that particular project. It's just like, I can't take it. And that's why I always tell people when they pitch someone or when they present someone a project, you know, it's not and I told them in the email, I was like, it's not like this is a no, not right now. It's like, no, never. It's just a no, not this, you know, because I just can't get behind it. But I always tell people, when you get rejected, don't like freak out. You like have no clue why. So I made sure to tell them, it's like, not that you're not talented. You want someone to be passionate about the project, because if I'm trying to pitch this, like, it's hard to fake something like that. So I'm just always like, you just never know. And that's why it's so hard, and you have to find the right fit for your, the particular project sometimes. And that's why it can take so dang long, because you have to make sure that the person, like, not like other projects which I can't talk about, unfortunately, over on this podcast, but there's other stuff that, dude, it like lights, like, I read it and it lights a fire in me, and I like start fantasizing about the meeting and how the pitch meeting's going to go, and then I'm just like, oh, the producer's going to love it. You know, I just get fired up. And that's the type of manager that you want, that's going to be able to facilitate these really passion-filled meetings. Not desperation, but passion-filled. There's a difference. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference, Whitney. And
I mean, I get excited just talking about it, and I can't talk about it, but I get really, I feel like you can tell I'm really excited. So, but yeah, period pieces, no thank you. But I know that they're big, like the Queen or what, all these things, and I just wish I could get behind them, but Game of Thrones is different. I don't consider that period. I mean, that's just kind of fantasy. But like true period, like historical basis, like no, which is odd, because I was a history minor. I'm just going to throw that in. I think it's really weird that I was a history minor in college, but like period pieces, no thank you. I mean, it's weird, right? I mean, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, but I can see where you're coming from, though.
I mean, that is it's kind of ironic, though. I'm just saying, for me, that I was a history minor, and I'm like, just no to... I just find that weird. I'm weird. That's all I'm saying. I'm weird.
No, I was just going to say, because I think Whitney, you're probably saying to yourself as you read these period pieces, you're probably saying this is going to be close to impossible to get produced because of X, Y, and Z. Because a producer friend once told me, he said as soon as you said it in the past, he goes, the budget goes way up. Because
that's what I was getting ready to say. It's true. The budget just shoots way up, except the clothing and all the other stuff. It's insane. And props and all that. It's nuts. So. Yeah. But anyway, I think, the mutually beneficial thing, researching people, knowing their genres, treating them like they're normal, not freaking out, not being desperate, all those things are really great when it comes to networking. And I think the other thing is follow through. Like, I am not the best on this. Like, actually the other day, this is funny, I sent out kind of like on the editing side of things, because I kind of, I do developmental editing for novelists and stuff. I kind of sent out like a satisfaction survey being like, hey, how am I doing? Like, I sent out to anybody I'd worked with in the past few years, and they were all like, you suck at returning emails. And I was like, I just got an assistant. You're welcome. And like, now my assistant like answers my emails for me, but like following, I know it was terrible. They're like, check marks on everything but follow through. And I was like, I'm sorry. But in terms of networking, it is super important to get back to people. Like, that is the number one thing. And I am like preaching to the choir when I say this, because obviously I don't have the best track record. But I think when people email you, you should email them back, within like a reasonable time period. Like, I think 48 hours, like, unless you're dying or something, like, you should do your best. A week at the most. But people really appreciate that. They feel respected. I think and now I have my assistant who can like immediately email them back when I'm like drowning in papers and reading. But like, yeah, I think following through is a big deal with networking. It seals the relationship. It's something you really want to do. Like, if you meet someone at a party, email them the next day and you're like, it was fantastic meeting you. I would love to continue the conversation we had over coffee, my treat. Let me know when you're available. Like, for someone who's trying to network and like get someone like and make a solid contact, absolutely you need to do that. And people do that to me all the time, and I meet them and I go, like, I make the time to try to go meet them. But like, the best advice I can give is you meet someone in person. So great to meet you. Thanks for taking the time to speak to me at the party. I had a great time. I'd love to continue our conversation. You pick the time and place, and I will make myself available. Like, if they're the person that you need information from or something, like, you do everything on your end to make it happen and make it as easy for them as possible. And they would totally appreciate that. And it just, who knows what it could lead to. But I think that is one of the biggest, that is a huge deal. Yes.
Yeah. They always going on, trying to make sure you bend to their schedule since you need something from them and not just.
No, exactly. I mean, I have to give a shout out. Like, I met with Joey Tushio the other day from Roadmap Writers, and he is a huge deal. Like, Roadmap Writers is big deal. I mean, they're kind of a conduit for getting aspiring writers like representation. So they aren't managers or anything like that, but they help people get agents and managers. But he also knows a ton of people on the film side of things, which I'm still kind of building my network in personally, because I know a lot of TV people, but not many feature film people. But he knows a ton of feature film producers and production companies, and I'd never met him in person. We're friends on Facebook. We're friends on Twitter. Like, I've talked to him a ton, but we've never met. And I really wanted to meet him, but I knew he was super busy. And so, like, I contacted him and was like, hey, I would love to meet you for breakfast or coffee or dinner whenever you have time. And I'm on the west side of LA, and I know you're in the valley, but I will come to you whenever you are available. Like, let it be known, and my fingers will snap and I'll be there. And we did, and it was a great thing. I trucked it all the way over to the valley. I mean, and it was totally worth the 45-minute drive to get there, But it's like, you want to meet people, you have to be willing to put forth the effort and make it happen, So, and it was a fantastic meeting too. I mean, it was totally worth it. But yeah, you got to be willing to put in, the kind of what I call the networking sweat equity, if you will, to make certain connections happen. So.
And I've heard nothing but good things, by the way, about Joey. He's a person that's on my list to have on this podcast.
Dude, he is so funny. Like, he is the best. You've got to have him on. I will tell him. He is so great. He's seriously the best. And they are doing such amazing things for the screenwriting community. So roadmap writers totally need to have him on. He actually used to be like over Happy Writers before it was acquired by Stage 32, I think. So he's been around for a while. He is awesome. But yeah, so that's just an example of putting in the networking sweat equity, if you will, and like not being, hesitant to like go out of your way to like meet people that would really benefit you to know and reach out to them and stuff. But yeah, I mean, you gotta put the work in, put your time where your mouth is and all that, if you will.
Yeah, and honestly, it's another way to actually see if you really want it too. Because if some people I think come into this business with too many unreal expectations. Like their first screenplay is going to win them 25 Academy Awards, and they're going to be a rich millionaire. And you're
like making my toes curl because I've heard this so many times. Yes, I'm like uncomfortable. But yes.
So that's another thing we can add, Whitney, to the networking tip list. Don't say that this is your first script that's going to win Academy Awards and make everyone a rich millionaire.
Yes. Do not say you are, like, in terms of like your, people who you die to meet. Like, don't say you're the next Quentin Tarantino when you pitch your script. Like, just don't. It's just no. It's not good. Don't tell me you're the next J.K. Rowling. On the literary side, it's like some people are like, I'm literally the next J.K. Rowling. I'm like, no, probably not. I mean, I don't say that to their face, but that tips me off that like, oh no, we have unrealistic expectations here. I always tell people, like, write because you love to write, not because you want to make money. I mean, this is a poor man's, thing sometimes. Like, it's not, I mean, you just write because you love it, not because you want to like get rich off of it. You're in the wrong career if that is your goal. Like it's just like any other thing. But networking can definitely help, and it is seriously. I mean, it is more so. I think so many people think it's about writing, but it really is in this business. Just a lot of it is about who you know, and who you're nice to, and who you're willing to just spend time with. I'm such a people person that that's why I love it so much. I love making relationships with people and getting to know people and hearing their stories. And I'm passionate about helping people get their stuff in the right hands. I just love it when it works, So, but it doesn't work all the time. But when it does, it's so worth it.
Yeah, and you mentioned don't compare yourself to Quentin Tarantino. Whitney, I was once at a pitch fest here in Philadelphia, and this guy got up there, and he's a few years older than I was, and he was kind of like this cool guy. I mean, this is a few years ago, and he was 28 at the time. And he got up there, and he's this like real cocky, cool guy, and he referred to himself as Superman, and also that he was the next Quentin Tarantino.
No. It just doesn't, I mean, that's just not going to go off well for you. Like, it's just not. I mean, people just want to see that you're a hard worker. Like I said this the last time I was on the show, that you're like a collaborator and that you're a hard worker. Because I always tell people when they're writing their pilots, that's great. Like, you want to get it into the best shape you can, or like your movie, you want to get it into the best shape you can. Like, let's just say on a crazy, wild experience that you sell that pilot, right? And let's just say that it gets picked up, right? And let's just say it actually gets ordered to pilot and the pilot is made. I mean, everyone has to know, I'm like, the odds that what you wrote is going to end up on the screen is so, like, not happening. So I always tell people, like, get it out there and get it as good as you can, but, like, the odds that it's going to be rewritten, not once, not twice, but maybe 3 or 4 times, sometimes into the dozens of times. I mean, that is so true. It's crazy. I was talking to Justin Marks, who is a screenwriter. He wrote The Jungle Book for Disney. He's working on, I may not be able to say what he's working on, so I won't. But he's working on something, and it's like this current thing that he's working on. I mean, that he has been hired and fired for the same script like 4 or 5 times because they've brought in other writers to work on it and then end up bringing him back. And he's like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Like, it's crazy town. So I would tell people, like, do not say you're so-and-so or so-and-so, because the odds that when you come in and your work is going to be rewritten and be rewritten and be rewritten some more, like, that's more realistic than I'm the next so-and-so. So you need to come in just being like, hey, I just want to work. I just want to write. I just want to create. Just tell me what to do and where to go, and I'm a team player and I'm in, you know? So that's better. That's the better kind of attitude to have versus like, I'm the next whoever. I mean, I don't even know besides Quentin Tarantino, but whatever. He's our new go-to.
Yeah, he's the go-to guy. I was just going to say that because everybody always says, I'm the next Quentin Tarantino. There's, you know, I was talking with some friends about this, and this is a whole nother conversation for another time. But if you actually look at directors, like famous directors throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, it's petered off. After like the whole video school generation of Rodriguez, Kevin Smith, Tarantino, you look in the 2000s, that celebrity director where people will know that person on the street is almost gone. It's weird.
It's seriously. No, it's seriously. And I'm like, who knows the writers these days either? I mean, except for other writers, but the general public doesn't know who, like, the showrunners for, very rarely knows the showrunners for, like, their favorite TV series. I mean, you know, I meet showrunners all the time, and I know who they are because, like, I research that stuff, you know, but, like, the general public doesn't know who the writers are, and very rarely these days the directors, until they watch, you know, the Oscars or the Emmys or whatever. So they're like, I don't know who those people are. So yeah, I mean, I think the bottom line in all this networking stuff, I think the bottom line is just be humble, be gracious, be willing to collaborate, you know, be willing to put in your effort and pull your own weight, and just be, you know, accessible to those things, and like, things will happen for you, you know? I mean, I really believe that. I mean, I think that you just play it cool and do your work and do your job. And because, I mean, I'll even say there's a lot of times where the writer isn't even like all that great. I mean, they're like almost there. The writing's really close. But like, because of their personality and who they are, like, things will happen for them, you know? So I think it really is half, you know, your talent and your effort and your work, and half like your personality and your transparency and your humbleness and your willingness to just be a part of a team, you know, because I mean, it's all a team effort, whether you're a filmmaker or a TV writer or a producer or director. I mean, it's always a team. It's never just one person in this business, ever. So you need to just show that you're willing, you know, that you're an easy person to work with. I think that's one of the biggest things, and that will help you network, like, you know, all the time. I mean, I think that's the biggest piece of advice I can give. So, I mean, I think this works for me. I mean, that's how I try to be, you know, and I mean, that's the real me, but I just think, you know, some people will put on like a networking face. So just be yourself, you know. I think
like that.
Be yourself is the best. I think being yourself is the best thing that you can do. So
I like that, Woody, the networking face.
Yeah, it's true, though. It's true. Because your real self is going to come out at some point, you know. So you might as well be yourself at the beginning. I mean, that's the worst, when you start working with someone and realize they are not who they projected themselves to be. That's why I was telling you, just be yourself when you're networking. Put forth your best self, but your real self, you know. Because you're going to be, I mean, they're going to see the real you eventually. Things get stressful. So, you know.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Very true, Whitney. Whitney, we've been talking for about an hour. I know you have a million and one things to do. So in closing...
Well, I always enjoy talking to you, though. So it is time well spent on my end.
Oh, well, thank you, Whitney. I mean, you know I enjoy talking to you, and I always enjoy talking to you, Whitney, and... you know, I'm just glad that you enjoy talking to me, because I said to your assistant, if you really want me to sum up my entire life into one character, it's George Costanza from Seinfeld.
I love it. It's so great. George is the best. Everyone loves George. He's so great. Everyone loves George.
Yeah, it's one thing he always said, and he said, Jerry, I don't think I've ever had a good conversation with anybody in my life, and it's not because the other person, it's just because George sits there and analyzes it, and whenever I have a podcast, I'm always like, man, I hope that was good. I hope I didn't say something stupid.
No.
Good. So Whitney, just in closing, where can people find you out online?
They can find me on my website at whitneydavisliterary.com, and then they can find me across all social platforms at WDavisLiterary.
And I will link to all of Whitney's links in the show notes at DaveBullis.com. Twitter, it's at Dave_Bullis. I still don't have the username I want, Whitney. They won't give it to me, so I'm still at Dave_Bullis. I want the one that's at Bullis, but some inactive account has that, and Twitter will not give it to me.
We must call them. I will champion you and try to figure it out.
I mean, you have the connections, Whitney. They won't listen to me, so
we'll have to do something.
Whitney, I want to say thank you so much again for coming on. It's always a blast.
Well, thank you for having me. I had a great time.
Whitney, and again, I wanted to meet. I hopefully will be able to meet at the end of April, and I also want to have you back on the podcast whenever you want to come back on, Whitney. You always feel free to let me know.
Absolutely, anytime.
Whitney, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Find Dave at davebullis.com. Please make sure to subscribe and share the podcast.